Economies of scale, scaling the stickman business. Up until now, John has been operating within the four walls of his garage. In economic terms, we've been looking at his business in the short run, a period where at least one of his inputs, namely the size of his workshop, was fixed. He could hire more workers or buy more switches, but he couldn't simply snap his fingers and manifest a massive factory. However, as John's Stickman Keyboards brand gains a cult following online, he realizes that to meet the massive demand, he has to think bigger. He needs to move from the short run into the long run. In this lesson, we're going to explore what happens when John removes all constraints. As in, Gregory Mankiw explains, the long run is a horizontal horizon where all costs become variable. John can build a bigger plant, buy more advanced machinery, and completely redesign his production process. This transition introduces us to one of the most powerful concepts in business, economies of scale. Economies of scale occur when the long-run average total cost declines as the quantity of output increases. This is the holy grail for a growing startup like John's. Why does this happen? The primary driver is specialization. When John was alone in his garage, he had to do everything: solder the boards, print the cases, handle the shipping, and manage the customer service. He was a jack of all trades, but a master of none. As his business scales and he moves into a professional factory, he can hire specialized workers. He can have one person who does nothing but precision soldering, another who specializes in 3D printer maintenance, and a logistics expert who optimizes shipping routes. Because these individuals focus on a single task, they become incredibly efficient at it. Furthermore, a larger scale allows John to invest in expensive, high-tech machinery, like a commercial-grade injection molding machine. That would have been far too costly for his garage setup, but becomes cheap when its cost is spread over 50,000 keyboards instead of 500. However, growth is not a one-way street to infinite profit. John must also be wary of the opposite phenomenon, diseconomies of scale. This occurs when the long-run average total cost starts to rise as the quantity of output increases. You might wonder, how can a bigger company be less efficient? The answer, according to Mankiw, usually lies in coordination problems. As Stickman Keyboards grows from a small team of 5 into a massive corporation with 500 employees, the management team becomes stretched. John can no longer walk across the room to talk to his head of production. Instead, there are layers of middle management, HR departments, and endless committee meetings. Communication begins to break down. A worker on the assembly line might notice a defect, but by the time that information travels up the chain of command to a decision-maker and back down, 1,000 faulty keyboards have already been shipped. This bureaucratic friction increases costs and eats away at the efficiencies gained through specialization. Between these two extremes, John might find a zone of constant returns to scale. This is a state where the long-run average total cost stays the same even as production increases. In this phase, John has achieved the benefits of specialization, but he hasn't yet hit the wall of coordination problems. His business is a well-oiled machine, operating at its peak potential. Visualizing this on a graph is crucial for John's strategic planning. If he looks at his long-run average total cost, RAC, curve, it will typically look like a broad U or a saucer shape. It starts by sloping downward during the economies of scale phase, flattens out during constant returns, and eventually slopes upward as diseconomies of scale kick in. John's job as a CEO is to identify exactly where his business sits on this curve. He needs to know if he should keep expanding to lower his costs or if he has reached the limit of growth, where further expansion will actually make his company less competitive. This long-run perspective is what separates a visionary entrepreneur from a temporary hobbyist. By understanding these concepts, John can make informed decisions about his capital investments. He knows that building a massive factory today might be expensive, but if it allows him to reach the economies of scale needed to lower his price and capture the market, it is a risk worth taking. Conversely, he knows that he shouldn't just grow for the sake of being big, if it means losing the lean, efficient spirit that made his startup successful in the first place. Every global giant, from Amazon to Apple, has had to navigate these exact same curves. They succeeded because they mastered the art of scaling, leveraging specialization while aggressively fighting the coordination problems that come with size. As John signs the lease on his first real factory, he isn't just buying space. He is making a calculated bet on the power of scale to turn his garage dream into a global industrial engine.